Every person has a story. Some stories entertain us, while others change the way we see the world. Welcome to TalePath English, where you can improve your English through powerful stories from history. Today, we will travel back to December 1st, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama. An ordinary evening was about to become one of the most important moments in American history. Most people had never heard the name Rosa Parks. She was not famous, wealthy, or a politician. She was a hard-working woman who believed that every person deserved dignity and respect. Before the night was over, one quiet decision would inspire millions and transform the fight for civil rights forever. Rosa Louise Macaulay was born on February 4th, 1913, in Tuskegee, Alabama. She grew up during a period when racial segregation was part of daily life in the American South. Segregation meant that black and white people were separated in schools, restaurants, waiting rooms, public transportation, and many other places. These rules were supported by laws known as Jim Crow laws. From an early age, Rosa understood that the system was deeply unfair. Black children often attended poorly funded schools, while white children had better buildings, books, and transportation. Rosa's mother taught her to value education. Her grandparents taught her to protect her dignity, even when society refused to treat her equally. As a child, Rosa sometimes walked to school while buses carried white children past her. She saw signs separating people by race. She also heard frightening stories about violence against Black Americans. These experiences taught her an important lesson. Injustice was not only found in laws, it could also be found in people's behavior, in silence, and in the fear that prevented others from speaking. Rosa was quiet, but she was not weak. She carefully observed the world around her and developed a strong sense of right and wrong. She learned that courage did not always mean shouting or fighting. Sometimes courage meant standing firmly by your beliefs, even when doing so was dangerous. In 1932, Rosa married Raymond Parks, a barber who strongly supported civil rights. Raymond encouraged Rosa to complete her high school education. At that time, very few Black Americans in Alabama had the opportunity to earn a high school diploma. Rosa later became involved with the Montgomery branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, commonly known as the NAACP. She served as the branch secretary and worked with civil rights leader E.D. Nixon. Her responsibilities included recording cases of racial injustice and helping people whose rights had been violated. Long before her famous bus ride, Rosa Parks was already an experienced activist. She understood the risks of challenging an unfair system. In Montgomery, city buses followed strict segregation rules. White passengers sat in the front, while black passengers were expected to sit in the back. Black riders often entered through the front door to pay their fare. Then they had to leave the bus and enter again through the rear door. Sometimes the driver drove away before they could get back on. The dividing line between the white and black sections could also be moved. When the white section became full, black passengers were ordered to give up their seats. Although black residents formed a large part of the bus company's customers, they were regularly treated with disrespect. For years, frustration had been growing throughout the community. On Thursday, December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks finished her work as a seamstress at the Montgomery Fair department store. After a long day, she walked to Court Square and boarded the Cleveland Avenue bus to travel home. Rosa paid her fare and found a seat in the first row of the section assigned to black passengers. She was 42 years old. The bus moved through the crowded streets, stopping as more passengers entered. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Rosa sat quietly, holding her handbag and thinking about her evening. She could not have known that within minutes, her name would become connected to one of the most important protests in American history. As the bus continued its journey, more passengers climbed aboard. Soon, every seat in the white section was occupied. When another white passenger entered, the bus driver noticed that there was nowhere for him to sit. The driver, James Blake, stopped the bus and ordered 4 black passengers in Rosa's row to stand. According to the segregation system, removing these 4 passengers would create a completely empty row for 1 white passenger. 3 of the passengers reluctantly stood and moved toward the back. Rosa remained in her seat. The moment was quiet. There was no dramatic speech and no planned audience. There was simply one woman deciding that she would not cooperate with humiliation any longer. The driver looked directly at Rosa and asked why she did not stand. Rosa answered calmly that she did not believe she should have to move. The driver warned her that he would call the police and have her arrested. Rosa did not argue. She did not shout or insult anyone. She simply accepted the possible consequences and remained seated. People sometimes say Rosa refused to move because she was physically tired after work. She was certainly tired, but that was not the main reason. She was tired of surrendering her dignity. She was tired of obeying rules that treated her as less important because of the color of her skin. This time, she decided not to move. The driver contacted the police. 2 officers arrived and entered the bus. They questioned Rosa and ordered her to stand. She remained peaceful as they placed her under arrest and led her away. Rosa was taken to Montgomery City Jail. She was fingerprinted, photographed, and charged with violating the city's segregation laws. The experience was frightening. She did not know how long she would remain in jail or what might happen next. However, Rosa understood that resistance sometimes required personal sacrifice. That evening, news of her arrest reached civil rights leaders, including E.D. Nixon. They immediately began discussing how Rosa's case could challenge segregation and awaken the entire community. Rosa was released from jail later that night after bail was paid. Meanwhile, Joanne Robinson, a professor and leader in the Women's Political Council, recognized the importance of the moment. For years, the council had complained about the unfair treatment of black bus passengers. Now, its members were ready to act. Working through the night, Robinson and her colleagues produced thousands of leaflets. The message asked black residents of Montgomery not to ride the buses on Monday, December 5th, the day of Rosa Parks' court hearing. The leaflets were distributed through schools, churches, businesses, and neighborhoods. Within a few days, the message had traveled across the city. Stay off the buses and stand together. On the morning of December 5, city officials expected the protest to fail. But as the buses traveled through Montgomery, something remarkable became clear. Their seats were almost empty. Thousands of black residents walked to work. Some traveled several kilometers. Others shared cars, rode bicycles, or used black-owned taxis. Older people walked with determination. Parents walked with children. Domestic workers walked to neighborhoods far from their homes. Rain, cold weather, and exhaustion did not stop them. The boycott was originally planned for only one day. However, its success proved that the community was ready for a longer struggle. That evening, thousands gathered at Holt Street Baptist Church to decide what should happen next. At Holt Street Baptist Church, the crowd was so large that many people had to stand outside. Community leaders formed a new organization called the Montgomery Improvement Association. They selected a 26-year-old Baptist minister named Martin Luther King Jr. as its president. King was young and not yet nationally famous. However, his powerful voice and belief in nonviolent resistance inspired the audience. He explained that the protesters were not seeking revenge. They wanted justice and equal treatment. The crowd voted to continue the boycott. What had begun with Rosa Parks' arrest was now becoming a united movement involving churches, community organizations, workers, students, and families throughout Montgomery. Days became weeks, and weeks became months. The city expected the protesters to become tired and return to the buses. Instead, the community created an organized transportation system. Volunteer drivers used their own cars to carry people to work, school, medical appointments, and church. Meeting points were established throughout the city. Dispatchers planned routes, and local residents donated money for fuel and vehicle repairs. Many people still had to walk long distances. One elderly woman reportedly explained that she was not walking for herself. She was walking for future generations. The boycott succeeded because thousands of ordinary people made difficult choices every day. Rosa's courage had started the protest, but the community's discipline kept it alive. The boycott placed serious financial pressure on the bus company because Black passengers had provided much of its income. City officials tried to stop the protest. Police officers followed carpool drivers and gave them tickets for minor or invented violations. Some drivers were arrested. Insurance companies were pressured to cancel coverage for vehicles used in the carpool system. Civil rights leaders also received threatening telephone calls. In January 1956, a bomb exploded outside Martin Luther King Jr.'s home while his wife and baby were inside. Fortunately, they survived. The protesters were frightened, but they continued. They understood that nonviolence did not mean the absence of fear. It meant refusing to allow fear to control their actions. Rosa Parks became an international symbol, but her decision brought serious personal difficulties. She lost her job at the department store. Her husband also experienced employment problems. The couple received threats and struggled financially. Rosa had not acted because she wanted attention. She had acted because she believed the law was wrong. Being called a hero did not protect her from stress, fear, or economic hardship. Still, she continued attending meetings and supporting the movement. Her experience reminds us that historical change is not created without sacrifice. The people we admire in history were human beings. They had families, responsibilities, and fears. Their courage came from moving forward despite those fears. While the boycott continued in the streets, civil rights lawyers challenged bus segregation in federal court. The case was called Browder versus Gale. Instead of focusing only on Rosa's criminal charge, the case was filed on behalf of several Black women who had also experienced discrimination on Montgomery buses. In June 1956, a federal court ruled that segregation on Alabama's public buses violated the United States Constitution. city and state officials appealed the decision. Several months later, the United States Supreme Court allowed the ruling to stand. Bus segregation was legally defeated. The protesters had achieved their central goal, but they waited for the official order before ending the boycott. On December 20th, 1956, the official order to integrate Montgomery's buses arrived. The boycott had lasted 381 days. The following morning, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., E.D. Nixon, and other black residents boarded integrated city buses. For the first time, passengers could legally choose their seats without being separated by race. The victory was historic, but it did not immediately end racism or violence. Some white residents reacted with anger, and buses were attacked. Nevertheless, an important barrier had fallen. The boycott demonstrated the power of organized, nonviolent protest. It also introduced Martin Luther King Jr. to the nation and gave new energy to the wider civil rights movement. The Montgomery bus boycott showed Americans that peaceful collective action could challenge powerful systems. Across the country, civil rights activists organized sit-ins, freedom rides, marches, voter registration campaigns, and legal challenges. The struggle continued for many years. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act prohibited racial segregation in many public places and outlawed several forms of employment discrimination. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act addressed barriers that had prevented many black Americans from voting. These victories were achieved by thousands of people, both famous and unknown. Rosa Parks did not create the civil rights movement alone, but her action became a powerful spark. Her quiet refusal showed people that change could begin with one clear decision. After leaving Montgomery, Rosa and Raymond Parks eventually moved to Detroit, Michigan. Rosa continued working for justice. She supported young people, spoke about civil rights, and worked for Congressman John Conyers for many years. She also established an institute to help educate and motivate young people. Rosa received many honors during her lifetime, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal. However, her true importance cannot be measured only through medals. Her greatest contribution was the example she gave to others. She demonstrated that a person did not need wealth, political power, or a loud voice to defend human dignity. A quiet person could still make a powerful difference. Rosa Parks died on October 24, 2005, at the age of 92. After her death, she became the first woman to lie in honor in the United States Capitol Rotunda. Thousands of people came to pay their respects. Today, she is remembered around the world as the mother of the modern civil rights movement. But her story is more complex than the image of a tired woman who accidentally refused to move. Rosa was an informed, experienced activist who had spent years working against injustice. Her decision on the bus was calm, deliberate, and courageous. She understood that remaining seated might lead to arrest, but she also understood that surrendering would allow an unfair system to continue. Rosa Parks did not know exactly what would happen when she refused to leave her seat. She did not know that thousands of people would walk to work for more than a year. She did not know that a young minister named Martin Luther King Jr. would become an international leader. She did not know that her decision would be studied by future generations. She only knew that what was happening was wrong. Her story teaches us that courage is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a quiet voice saying no. Sometimes it is choosing dignity when obedience would be easier. One action may appear small, but when it expresses a truth shared by many people, it can begin a movement. Rosa Parks' story reminds us that ordinary people can create extraordinary change. Her courage was not the absence of fear. It was the decision to defend what was right, despite fear. Now, here is today's question. Do you believe that one person's decision can truly change society? Explain your answer and give an example from Rosa Parks' story or from another person in history. Write your answer in the comments using complete English sentences. Thank you for watching TalePath English. But before you go, it is time to learn 5 important vocabulary words from today's story. Try to use at least one of these words in your own sentence and write it in the comments below. Word number 1 is segregation. Segregation means the practice of separating people into different groups, especially because of their race. Here is an example. Racial segregation forced black and white passengers to sit in different sections of the bus. Word number 2 is dignity. Dignity means the quality of being worthy of respect. Here is an example. Rosa Parks protected her dignity by refusing to accept unfair treatment. Word number 3 is boycott. A boycott is an organized refusal to buy or use a product or service as a form of protest. Here is an example. Black residents organized a boycott and refused to use Montgomery's city buses. Word number 4 is defiance. Defiance means openly refusing to obey a rule or authority. Here is an example. Rosa Parks' peaceful defiance showed that she would not obey an unjust rule. Word number 5 is injustice. Injustice means a situation in which people are treated unfairly or denied their rights. Here is an example. Rosa Parks spent much of her life fighting racial injustice. Now it is your turn. Choose one of these 5 vocabulary words and use it in your own sentence. The words are segregation, dignity, boycott, defiance, and injustice. Write your sentence in the comments below. This is a great way to practice the new vocabulary and improve your English. Thank you again for watching TalePath English. Continue learning, continue exploring, and remember, every powerful journey begins with one brave step. See you in the next story.